Hi, my name is Aparajita Jeedigunta, and I absolutely love biryani.
I do too. Hello and welcome to the Woke Wisdom Podcast with Alexandra Loves. I'm with my furry cosmic guardians, Cyrus and Bisu. Joyfully coming to you from the moon garden where wisdom is nourished, awakening is embraced, and fun is encouraged. My guest today is an inspiration to me. She speaks so joyfully about her experiences of major life changes that if I was in her position, I don't know how I would handle it. She has beautifully created what I would call sacred activism on a very personal level as well as a community level in a super creative and joyful way. And I'm excited to share that convo with you today. But before we go there, I just want to say thank you. We haven't been around that long doing these episodes consistently as we started this year. And I've been getting so many awesome reflections through my inboxes and by word of mouth. Thank you for listening. If you're listening to all the episodes or one episode or picking and choosing whatever you want, I'm just grateful that you're here and that these messages are getting out. And I've been hearing how you're sharing them with your friends because, I mean, these guests, you know, the wisdom that's coming from these guests is amazing. And I have personally shared, with my friends when I'm like, oh, my friend needs to hear this. And so I've been hearing a lot of you doing that, sharing with someone who you know is looking for these messages that are coming through. Thank you for doing that. And please, if you can, just clickety-click over to Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you're listening, honestly, and write a review. That's what helps us get these messages out into the world. It's really the reviews that affect the algorithms, and the algorithms say, hey, let's push this out there. So I really appreciate you taking just a few moments to do that in addition to your sharing. Thank you. And for those of you who are new to the Woke Wisdom Podcast, please do check out the very first episode. It's called Orientation and Welcome. And that just gives you an idea of what we're doing here and what to expect. Dr. AJ is an Indian-American social and personality psychologist and a diversity, equity, inclusion, and belongingness practitioner and consultant. As a founder and CEO of AJ Rao LLC, a boutique DEI and B firm for individuals and small to mid-sized businesses, she specializes in cross-cultural equity work, accessibility, and leadership development for Asian American women who are passionate about becoming impactful agents of social change in their communities and networks. Whoa! AJ is a 2-time traumatic brain injury survivor, is also a motivational speaker, a keynote speaker, and a passionate practitioner of Indian performing arts and the ancient wisdoms embedded in these art forms. She embeds as much of her work with ancient cultural wisdoms as possible. She is currently focused on increasing equity for local and regional not-for-profits in India by connecting these causes with art. Family, let's take a deep breath and welcome our new friend, AJ. I just had lamb biryani for the first time this year.
Yeah. It's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle. It's an emotion. It's not a food.
Do you know how to make it?
I do.
Oh, your family's so lucky.
I do. It's part of the, we'll call it ancient wisdom that has been passed down, although it's not quite that ancient that it's been passed down on, because my dad's the first one that started making it. But he's 70, he could be ancient.
I mean, hey, the ancestors might have been talking to him about it, telling him what to put in there.
I mean, Google did, but we'll go with ancestors. Yeah. Although he's had a fair share of various types of biryanis over the course of his travel in India. Yeah. So he sort of remembered some of the flavors. He just couldn't remember the ingredients. So then once he, kind of looked it up on Google, then he started experimenting and all of that. So now the recipe that he has is for the masala is something that he's concocted that is not quite any one of those regions. and not quite all of those regions either. It's his.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Bless him. Aparajita.
Yeah.
Thank you for that correction.
Yeah. No problem. But I actually do prefer to go by AJ.
Oh, that's what you say on your phone, on your
or on everything.
Yeah. AJ.
Yes. Actually, there's a story behind that.
Oh, please tell me.
Well, so initially it was because I was just getting very irritated about people calling me Aparajita, like, the Mexican sort of the Spanish pronunciations of the letters. And Aparajita is a very sacred, very ancient name for the goddess. So it would just always rub me the wrong way that it's like, okay, so you can say, Tchaikovsky, but you can't say my name, even after I correct you. But then after, since I started my DEI work and since I started learning, delving into the nuances of DEI and the nuances of belongingness and the idea of not being able to craft or create or develop belongingness or inclusion or equity without bringing accessibility into question, my name's not accessible. And that really bothered me more so than the irritation. Yeah. So I decided, hey, AJ is accessible. So now I prefer to go by that because, it is something, if it's 2 letters, and as long as, and these sounds exist in almost every language, spoken language right now. So it is as universally accessible and inclusive as I can make it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And wow. So do you have your friends and family, do they call you AJ or do they call you by your full name?
My full name if I'm in trouble.
Oh, okay.
You know how that goes. Yeah.
Yeah.
But most of the time, if we're in public, they call me AJ. And, and of course, if we're at home, everyone has, their own nicknames for everyone else, right? So, or the relational titles and all of that. So at home, it's different. But in public, they call me AJ. And they introduce me as AJ because I made it a point to stress to them the importance of me not officially changing my name, but changing my kind of spoken nickname to that and why it is important for them to support me in that as well.
That's really, and do you mind if I ask if they understood? Did they understand or was there a process?
The understanding was immediate. Practice of it was a process because it does take time,
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, whenever they did introduce me by my full name after we had these conversations, I would actually, interject and say, and I prefer to go by AJ, or I would sometimes gently, sometimes not so gently correct them in private.
Yeah. Wow. I feel like a lot of people that have names that are not, names that we would consider typical here or common here. I feel a lot of people have that story, especially because we are so global. This is not just like in our neighborhoods, but also online. I've been to or run so many online big summits, panels and everything where there's like someone from Pakistan and then there's somebody from Senegal and then, somebody from another country and everybody's trying to say each other's name and it's just not happening. And then to walk around in the world like that. Yeah. Yeah. And my name is Alexandra. Mine's pretty easy, but like every once in a while I'll get Alexandria or somebody will just shorten it strangely to Alexis. And sometimes I'm like,
Not even Alex?
Alexis, I don't understand.
Where's the IS?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know, but I can relate a tiny bit to that in some ways. So thank you for sharing that. AJ, if you could be an animal or non-human, what would you be and why?
Now, does it have to be an animal or can it be a bird as well?
Yeah, it can be any being besides human.
Oh, okay, perfect. Well, first of all, supernaturally, I a werewolf, 100% a werewolf. Yeah. I mean, I think I'm a werewolf now.
Does something happen to you on the full moon?
Oh yeah. No, I go nuts around the full moon time anyway. There is this real pull, but I just, when you think about werewolves and like werewolf mythology and werewolf origins and all of that, and the idea of that unbreakable loyalty, into the pack. And at the same time, yes, the pack has a hierarchy, but the hierarchy is based on the rules, right? And of course, some of the rules are strength based, but those who take care of the pack are just as important as the hunters, are just as important as the warriors, are just as important as the guards, because if you don't function together, then the entire pack as a whole becomes weak in some way, shape, or form. So that part of it, and werewolves are some of the few creatures, like supernatural creatures, that can actually breed werewolves. They're one of the few creatures where you can be born a werewolf, whereas those other, those bloodsuckers, don't get me started on them.
Okay, so I have a question because I know nothing about werewolves besides seeing it in, depictions in TVs and movies and books. Are you possibly talking about like a deeper knowledge of werewolves that comes from like a cultural stance or anything? Because I've never heard anybody speak about werewolves in this way.
From a cultural stance. Yes, I come from the culture of werewolves, Alexandra.
I asked this because I just found out that Sasquatch is actually like Bigfoot. I thought that was just a branding invention, but it's not. It actually comes from like a culture, like a native culture here. So I had to ask because now I'm like, oh, maybe dragons and werewolves and all these.
It's not that deep.
Okay. It sounds that deep.
I mean, yes, there is an entire supernatural spectrum within the Hindu mythology too. And this idea of half human, half beast or half animal is not foreign to us. Like, Lord Ganesh, has an elephant head, and many of our asuras, suppose the loose translation would be demons, but not quite. They embody animal traits as well. And we have another, avatar of Lord Vishnu is Narsimha, who's half, who has the body of a lion and the bottom portion of a man, and the face of a lion. So it's not uncommon in the Hindu mythological spectrum or supernatural spectrum. I guess that made me not like a little bit more open-minded when I came to America and I found out about vampires, werewolves, sirens, succubi, incubi, like, this entire kind of world first through movies and cheesy shows. And then I was fascinated enough and I got hooked enough to then delve into this amazing world called fan fiction.
Oh my gosh, yes.
you know? And this is a whole genre there. And from there, some of these authors really kind of done their historical research.
Yes.
Whether it's witchcraft or vampirism or werewolves and no. And some of them would actually put their references at the end of their fan fictions.
So cool.
Right. And so for me, especially as an academic, person with an academic background, I completely geeked out.
You followed the branches.
And I was like, oh, I gotta look this one up and I gotta look that one up.
Yeah.
And it just kind of snowballed into this thing. And eventually, like, the werewolf was just something that I personally resonated with, because I went through that phase, especially, as a woman and as an Indian woman, growing up with all of that conditioning, growing up with all of the, you ought to do this, you should do this, you must do this, don't do it, don't wear this, don't act this way, be seen but not heard, and then just all of that.
Yes.
Now, when you bring all of that into entrepreneurship, into the work that we do, right? You're pretty much, you feel like there's this beast inside of you that's just caged.
Wow.
And can't get out. Right? And so for me, everything I do took off when I cut those shackles out and I just howled and I let this beast out. And so that's why the werewolf personally resonates with me, because here is a creature that is incredibly smart, incredibly intelligent, incredibly loyal, and is animalistic without a care in the world.
Yeah. Wild.
Yeah, is wild. Yeah.
I really love that you mentioned entrepreneurship in this, because I find that has been a big challenge for me as well. It's like when I started 10 years ago, probably more, just putting, making business out of my work, what I'm doing here, learning how to tie in my duties and my purpose in this world into something that could also bring resources. It's an interesting journey. And there was sort of a rewilding. It's still happening now, that I started with just in a box, and I thought I was out of the box, and maybe in some ways I was. And I agree with you and have experienced this. Like, the more I just take a layer off and show up rawly as myself, which, for me, it didn't happen like that. It takes years and still happening to show myself in a way that is really close to my heart and my spirit. It turns out that the collaborators, the students, sometimes the things that I get asked to do tend to match more and align more with my heart and who I really am. And it feels raw sometimes. And in the beginning, I remember I was like, no, it doesn't, I'm too exposed, too much, and now I'm just like, no, this is where it's at. This is the place to be. And also I want to show people that I'm, a lot of people that I work with are trying to get there too. So I'm really glad that you're sharing this, and people are remembering to become wild again, find their inner werewolf.
I mean, it could be, listen,
it could be a butterfly.
Exactly. There is no requirement that there's werewolves in all of us.
That's
you could have
true.
a butterfly in you. You could have a peacock in you. You could have a mermaid in you. You could have a phoenix in you. Who knows?
Yeah.
Or you could have you and another human being in you.
Yeah.
I don't know. But the thing is that unleashing of that inner.
Yeah.
That's gotta happen.
Yeah. Yeah. AJ, is there something that you could share with us that you discovered about yourself this past year that's pretty big, significant?
Yeah. It relates to what we were talking about. I realized I was operating on other people's expectations of what I should be as an entrepreneur. So now, since that discovery, of course, it is a process, right? To realize, ooh, there's these shackles that I didn't even realize I had.
Yeah.
There's this box. I literally took myself out of one box and very neatly tucked myself into another box. And now I have to somehow contort myself out of this box and at least breathe before I put myself into yet another box. So that was a huge discovery. And as a result of that, I actually no longer do like 90% of the things that I was doing in 2020. Pretty much like 90% of the things that I received all of the awards for, the global influencer awards, and like, the stages where I was next to like Greta Thunberg and Kamala Harris. And I willingly walked away from all of that.
Wow.
Because I was like, this is great. And I am effing miserable.
Oh.
I want to do it. I literally just told my husband, I woke up one day and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't even care if I officially don't have a business anymore.
Wow.
I don't care if people don't think I'm an entrepreneur anymore. I don't care. I don't care. So now what I do is I just engage with my community, have a ton of fun with them, share my learnings along the way, learn from them.
Yeah.
And I sing about 6 to 8 hours a day.
Wow.
And my sleep schedule is all over the place, but hey.
Yes.
Who needs sleep? Because most of my communities in India, I reconnected with my roots. I relearned how to properly and fluently speak my native language.
What?
Yeah.
Hey, congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. So I read and write, and speak, of course, and just a lot of people are like, okay, so you do nothing. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm okay with that. I get to say that.
Yeah.
I'm blessed enough to have my family and the support system around me where they know this about me too, that I'm not, while I am on this process of rewilding and rediscovery, I love that word, I'm going to borrow it. It's not going to be permanent, because I'm also the type of person that I do eventually incorporate these things into the work that I want to do, and my purpose and my calling and my service, and all, like, they all eventually do mesh together. And because they've seen me go through it before, they realize it's a process. They can't rush it or force it, because when they do, AJ gets angry and bad things happen.
Yes.
Like people getting yelled at, or me just being like, well, fine, I'm just not going to do anything. But they also know that eventually the alignment will happen. Until then, it is going to be messy.
Yeah.
I'm going to be very impatient with them and impatient with myself. And then I'm going to go back and bawl my eyes out and say, I'm so sorry. I'm just going through this thing. Just figure something out. And so that's the process I'm in right now. And I'm finding out these wonderful things about myself. I'm just really, really questioning the very idea of how we think about potential currently. Yeah. So yeah, it's been a doozy of a year.
I mean, it sounds like alchemy, and it sounds like it's interesting that anybody would say that you're doing nothing, because to relearn first of all, to relearn a language, how to speak it, how to write it, to be singing 6 to 8 hours a day, that alone. And on top of that, you're a mother with a family. You just made a huge transition. That's not nothing, my friend.
Well, because I'm not getting paid $1 million for it, right? So it's nothing.
Right.
Because
and in our setup, your worth, it has to do with job and money, right? Okay. Yeah, I get that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that just makes me laugh.
Yeah. Wow. What a beautiful transition. I wonder, do you feel, though you were ready to walk away, obviously it was the right time, you're ready. Do you feel any grief for that old life?
Sometimes. I think that's natural, right?
Yeah.
Because we have been, again, globally in some ways, conditioned into this very colonial, patriarchal idea of success and what success means.
Yeah.
And that usually is, it boils down to how many zeros, are added to your paycheck, right? How famous you are, how sought after you are in certain communities and in certain circles, and all of that kind of stuff. So it's not like I didn't have fun, in that, right? I did have a lot of fun. It was a lot, though. It just was a lot, and I got burned out.
Yeah.
I do grieve some moments. I grieve like that electrical energy.
Yeah.
When you're in front of like 5,000 people, speaking to them about changing their life. Right. And of course, sometimes I do grieve not seeing that $25,000 for a speaking engagement getting transferred into my account.
Yeah.
Let's be real.
Yeah.
Because that does help pay my bills and help me live in a more comfortable way. So there are moments that I do grieve about that. But when I finally walked away from everything, I think what helped me not stay in that grief is the fact that I walked away because of the second surge of COVID in India.
Okay.
And that work, there's no comparison, So I walked away from this right into service. Without a break and I walked away from this because of that service.
Okay.
There was no break there. There was no, it was me even starting when that surge happened, when these massive amounts of, deaths started coming in because of that surge in India. And so many of my community was affected. Helping them through their grief in that moment is what helped me realize I'm miserable. I mean, I'm successful here.
Yeah.
But in many ways, I'm miserable.
Wow.
And while that work is literally thankless, supporting people through their grief and having to verify reports of hundreds of deaths per day and verify where the beds are, oxygen, shortages, all of this work, while it is exhausting emotionally and overwhelming. It just made more sense. It's more needed. It was more needed. It just made more sense. It was where I could really tap into that purpose and calling and not think about my purpose and calling as a paycheck.
Uh-huh.
So that's where that shift happened for me. So it was easy for me to walk away in many ways.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I have that challenge sometimes myself where I'm like, I wouldn't call it survival mode, but looking at my work as this is my sole means of resources. And so it needs to make money. The need for it to make money kind of strips away my original intention in creating it. And that blocks me in doing my best work. And I found, and I'd love for you to speak on this if you relate, I found that there was this level of faith and trust that I developed in sort of whatever you want to call it, spirit, source, the energy around me, whatever, just whoever has my back, right? I found that it was important for me to have this deep faith and trust that if I just do this work that's in my heart in the way that makes sense for me and is aligned for me, that I'm creating to be of value to others, that this team around me will support me because they know I need, resources to live in a house and eat food, that I will be supported. The belief in that required me to be very trusting of forces outside of me and have faith that even if times are hard, like this is going to be something that I can keep going and not have to split my focus so much, having a job and gigs, doing other things I don't want to be doing. Did you, your situation is a little different than mine, but did you have interactions with the ideas of faith or trust when you were sort of in this time of, letting go of the bigger paychecks and moving into this other way of this work that is thankless and emotionally exhausting?
Absolutely. I think that's actually really important for us to remember, right? That it's not just in those moments of transition. We need to be talking to whatever, spirit, universe, the divine, whatever. We need to be talking to them every day. We need to be checking in with them every day, even on good days. And I'm still on that journey.
Yeah.
But that's what I remind myself of. That's what I'm starting to realize is, yes, there is a huge sense of, I don't know how this will work out, but I am going to just do it anyway and trust that it'll happen. Mm-hmm. Trust that I'll be okay. It'll happen. I don't know how. Don't ask me the hows. No more details.
Oh, that's so hard.
This is going to happen.
That's so hard for me to do. I'm learning, but that is so difficult for me to do.
It is. That's why I said it's an ongoing thing, because every single day there's at least one moment where I'm passing by a mirror in the house and I happen to look at myself and I'm like, you're out of your damn mind, right? You gotta be. And then I still go do what I'm doing.
Embracing it.
You gotta understand that at certain point, sanity is overrated.
Agreed.
And because if nobody that believes 100% in sanity and logic and all of that reason, faith and trust don't come into the picture there.
That's right.
So, at least for me. So I'm okay being a little insane if it means I talk to the universe and I'm just like, dude, what are you doing? Or lady, come on. Like, I'm trying to do this. A little help, please, or whatever it may be.
I mean, I like the fact that you said out of your mind. I've heard this phrase. I've used this phrase my whole life, right? But something just dropped in for me. Last night I went to the documentary Voices of the Wisdom Keepers, and one of the elders there was talking about Ilarion. I'm going to say the last name wrong, but Mettercliff. I'll put it in the show notes somewhere so people can find it. But he was talking about this thing that we all hear, but it was a great reminder, which is start from your heart. Your mind, your mind is not going to lead you to the right place. Get out of the monkey chatter. It always starts at the heart. And so just now when you said, you're out of your mind, it's like, great. Like in this culture, especially, it's time for us to get out of our mind. So that I feel like that's in some ways like this sacred meditation that if we answer the call right now is totally ready for us to do. And I catch myself often when it's all of a sudden it's like all in my head, everything's in my head and trying to perfect. And like you said, the faith and the trust, just there's no room for that. It's just like, I need to know, I need to control. My mind is the supreme ruler of my life. That's a supremacy. And it's like, nah, because then comes worry and anxiety and resentment and judgment if the control didn't work. I
just turned my video off because my dog is going nuts behind me, so I'm going to move.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah. But no, absolutely. Right. And especially what you said about the mind being like this supreme ruler of your world or whatever. Mm-hmm. Let me tell you, take it from a 2-time brain injury survivor. Oh. Your brain ain't all that. Like if you're relying on just your brain, am I allowed to cuss on here?
Yeah, you can say whatever you want.
I guarantee your brain's going to screw you over.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. Heart first, because the brain has such clever, sneaky ways of tricking us into this world of Maya, this world of the assumption that our perception is reality. And that, and to the point where then we stop believing and trusting in what we're feeling, even if that feeling is telling us that what we think is this reality, there's something off with it.
Yeah.
It took 2 big hits to my head and, many years of recovery and permanent chronic conditions for me to realize, the brain is not the ruler of us. It's our heart. Our heart ought to be the ruler of us, not our brain.
Wow.
And I genuinely don't say ought, but in this case, I will.
2 major brain injuries. Wow. So how has this journey of brain injury and then recovery, being in recovery, influenced this sort of rewilding, this allowing the werewolf out now?
I think that's sort of where it all started, right? Because before my brain injuries, I was like 100% sure I was going to go into academia and become a professor. And after my brain injury, I just kind of looked, I was still teaching and all of that. And I was looking at the world around me, like, as I was rediscovering my identity, like who I thought I was, who I wanted to be, all of that. I was just like, this shit makes 0 sense. what the hell am I doing here? Like, what is this? But at the same time, I was a doctoral candidate already and all of that. So I didn't want to also quit.
Yeah.
Because I did go into my graduate work and my PhD because I had a passion for the work. And while what I felt like my purpose and my calling had changed, it didn't mean that the passion for this work no longer fit in with that.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was the kind of work that your passion, if you're passionate about something, you can implement that passion into practice in like a gazillion different ways.
Yes.
And so I finished my PhD. Then I was like, oh, maybe I'm meant to be in corporate. Oh, yeah. So I snort. I still laugh.
I just can't imagine you. Not that you're incapable. Of course you're capable, but I just can't imagine you. Oh,
it didn't last long.
Oh, the conformity. It just doesn't match who I know, what I know of you at all.
That I was like, wow, did I get hit in the head? Oh yeah, I did. It's like, what is this? Like, this is horrible. So then I thought, oh, maybe nonprofit management.
Mm-hmm.
Slightly better, but
mm-hmm.
I think in that particular case, it wasn't even, I won't say anything negative about not the nonprofit management sector.
Yeah.
I think the nonprofit that I chose to work with in that time in my life was just not the right one for me.
Right. Yeah.
And so because of that, I didn't know at that time that, oh, well, we have to do, not all nonprofits are the same.
Yeah.
Sounds really obvious, but a lot of people don't realize that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
They think nonprofit management is just nonprofit management.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. It's as simple as that, but it's not. So after that is when I became an entrepreneur. But of course, by then, so all of these were iterations of rewilding, right?
Right.
Because I was moving more and more away from the conformity. Mm-hmm. Then I became an entrepreneur, but I was still conforming to the expectations of entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
And now I am where I am. So all of this, of course, my injuries and my recovery and my my discovery of myself and my rediscovery of so many things, informed and influenced every single step and nuance of this.
Yes.
Because if not for if not for this, I would either be like a neurosurgeon or on a tenure track at a university somewhere.
Wow. If you were doing that, I don't know that you would have time to sing 6 to 8 hours a day.
If I were doing that, I don't think I would even be thinking about joy, potential, or anything. I would, my calling at that point would be cutting through brains or teaching people.
Wow, I'm glad you I'm glad you took a different path. And it seems like the head injury shook things up and opened up a whole bunch of paths that maybe you weren't considering as viable before.
Yeah, a couple of knocks to the head tends to do that to people.
Wow. Blessings.
Yeah, and that. Thank you. It's interesting that you brought that up because now, once I got to the point of recovery where I mean, I still have flare-ups and all of that, but once I got to the point of recovery where I felt functionable again, even though I wasn't functioning, I knew I could when I chose to take that step. Since that point on, I've called my brain injuries, in retrospect, the greatest blessings of my life.
Wow. Wow.
And people get weirded out when I say that. I'm like, okay, hear me out. I'm not saying they weren't excruciating to go through.
Yeah.
You know, that's not what I'm saying here. I'm not saying they're easy or pain-free or that I think other people should go get brain injuries to, get these kind of blessings. No, for me, going through all of that trauma, that pain, that recovery, everything, in retrospect, is, while it was absolutely terrifying and excruciating going through it, and it is still in moments now terrifying and excruciating when I have a flare-up, I would not be who I am now. I would not be what I am now. I would not be who I want to be without them.
Oh, yeah. I like who you are now.
Thank you. I do too.
What are you doing these days that's aligned with your spirit? I mean, we talked about a lot of those things, it sounds like, but I know you also have projects and you have relief work. And what could you share with us? Especially, I'm interested in one of the projects that's going on right now with the music.
Yeah. That project gives me like literally boundless, limitless joy. And I think every single one of your listeners at this point, when I talk about this, will be able to hear the automatic smile in my face, in my words about this. But before I get to that, I am doing some work. That's why I said 90% of what I was doing is gone. I've chosen to focus exclusively now on Asian women, Asian women who are not necessarily looking to climb up the corporate ladder, but are looking to amplify the power of their voices and increase their leadership skills.
Okay.
It's not about the rat race, because leadership is not a hat that you wear. It's who you are as a person.
Word. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I still do some of that work, and so I still talk at a few conferences, and but I am I am working with a couple of clients, but I get to be very selective now, because if you're in it for the money, I don't even want your money. But if you're in it to actually make a difference in the world, then sure, I will take your investment in yourself and I will help you do exactly that.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I'm doing. And then of course the singing project. I think you know about Clubhouse, right?
Yes.
Audio app. Yeah. So I spent, since November of 2020, I've spent a lot of time on Clubhouse. And I have gained a decent amount of traction there. And that's actually how I got first found out about the relief efforts happening in India for the second surge, and got involved and changed the trajectory of my life and all of that.
Yeah.
And within the Telugu community, which is a South Indian community, actually within the entire Indian community, where the majority of the influx happened between March to July of 2021, because people were so isolated. Just like when Clubhouse first came out here in the US, the first invitations that went out and the reason it grew was because we were all isolated. We had nothing else to do.
Yeah.
Same thing for them at that point. So there was this massive influx. And, us Indian people, we love our Bollywood, Tollywood, all of the woods, just the cinema industry, the music industry, the arts. And
yes. I grew up on those movies. I grew up on those movies. I don't know if I told you that, because I grew up in Saudi Arabia. Yeah, I grew up in Saudi Arabia, and before there was satellite and everything, we only had 4 channels, and 2 of them were from India. So I watched a lot of soap operas and movies. Nice. And still now I watch a lot of movies from India because it just feels normal to me.
Exactly. So you know what I'm talking about. We love our movies.
Yes.
Because our every movie has every genre in it.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Like,
yes.
You don't like this emotion? Promise. Wait 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And they're freaking 3 hours long anyway. So you're going to experience the entire spectrum of emotions in a movie.
That's so true.
With 8 songs in between, all of it. So hey, that's a great thing about my culture, man. It's our people, as much as as much as there's all of this sort of collectivistic mindset and this conformity and this obedience and all of this, don't talk to your elders, blah, 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 or don't talk back to your elder, all of these other restrictions. Man, we're super expressive in our movies. Movies are how I think the only way we can get all of these expressions out, because we can't do it in society. Right. So anyway, I'm rambling about this point, but we have a lot of, there were a lot of competitions happening in the Indian community, singing competitions, because it's an audio app, and a lot of also discussions about music. And so there were, there are a lot of aspiring singers, very talented singers and musicians who, for a variety of reasons, have just not had the opportunities to create a platform for themselves.
Yes.
And Clubhouse was one platform they could create. And so these singing rooms and these competitions, I mean, they would draw hundreds of people, thousands by the end of it. And, and at the end, and then the winners would get 5,000 rupees or 10,000 rupees, which really just, it amounts to a couple $100 here. But in India, that it at least it was some sort of an acknowledgement to them.
Yes.
And there was, and there were a couple of things that I was noticing. One is, there was, some of the competitions weren't being run in a transparent enough way to where the ethics of the competition seemed questionable. And the other thing, and this was the bigger thing that I was noticing, but also concerned about, was great. We're getting together to have this fun. We're getting together to listen to music, do all of this other stuff. But, and there's, excuse me.
Oh, hi, puppy.
And there's, thousands of people gathered here. To what end? And this was concerning to me, was all of these hundreds and thousands of people were getting together and we're having fun. And sure, some, a couple of people are getting, a couple $100 out of it at the end of the day. Yes. But we're spending hours and hours and hours talking about music, but also nothing, Yeah. And I felt to what end? We could do when do we get an opportunity to have hundreds or thousands of people together? It's pretty rare.
Yeah.
And and we are also talking about communities that are in dire need of help. And these rooms, these communities are organizing themselves very naturally, very organically, with no outcome.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And that did not sit right with me. So I decided to design a competition for a cause. So I'm currently running a singing competition where, this was the other thing I also noticed, is that many of these singers, they would have to practice on their own, and then they would come in and they would get judged and they would get torn apart.
Oh, wow.
But these are also singers who don't have the formal structures of training. They are self-taught or learned through YouTube lessons and things like that. And so even when they were getting torn apart and they were receiving, they weren't getting torn apart in a bad way, but they were getting torn apart in terms of feedback, in terms of constructive criticism.
Yes.
But they did not know how to receive it because they're on their own.
Yeah.
Right. So these were the three things I noticed. So I decided that the ethics, the lack of community focus, and then the lack of support for the singers. So I decided to create this competition for a cause and tie those three together, where from the very beginning, every rule, every communication, everything went out to all of the registrants, all of the contestants from the very beginning. So by the time they even auditioned, they knew what the round themes, all of those were going to be, when they were going to be, the timings and all of that. Then on top of that, every single contestant that went past audition, I found 16 trained singers and formed 8 teams of them. And so every contestant gets at least 2 mentors. But we shuffle the contestants. So over the course of the competition, they will have received coaching, training, feedback, and development from 10 trained singers, each contestant. If they get to the end, 10 of the 16, because there's some details in there that why is it 10 as opposed to all 16. I won't get into that.
Yeah.
And then this is my favorite part. Every contestant got assigned to an NGO cause. We picked 8 unknown NGOs that they're small, they're local and regional, and they're already doing amazing work with very limited resources, and they have no exposure. They're caught in that catch-22 of, to get more funding, they need more exposure. To get the exposure, they need the funding.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes. Yeah.
And I'm like, that's a problem I can solve because we have this community now.
Yes.
Boom. Every contestant got assigned to an NGO, one of the 8 NGOs. And over the course of the competition, every round, in addition to the singing, their task is to learn about the NGO, to spread awareness by either doing rooms on Clubhouse or through social media posts or sharing it with their family and friends through WhatsApps, Facebook Lives, however they want to do it. There's no restrictions on that. But if they don't do anything at all, that's when they get disqualified. And I have disqualified a couple of people because they try to take advantage of it. And I had no problems because, again, transparent, ethical.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And every week the contestants get assigned one question, which makes them dig deeper and deeper and deeper into the NGO's work and support them. And we have actually, as of right now, going into round 3, we have 43 contestants, and we started off with 80. So we're about, we cut it in about half. Out of the 40 that left, About 28 of them are still engaged with the NGOs they were assigned to and are still working with them.
Wow. This is accessible for people. This is an accessible model.
Yes.
This is like, yes, it's a lot of doing. It's a lot of work, but it's doable. Like I can do that with everything that's sitting in front of me right now. Access my community online, organize myself, write emails and letters, finding the right NGOs, contacting community to help me. Like, I'm sure there's other layers and many layers of things that, not to diminish the work by not listing all of them, but there's many things that you were doing. This is accessible to so many of us who are entrepreneurs, so many of us who have time on our hands at home. This is something that even over time you could do, even if you have a job and are doing this in the afternoons after work as a project over the fall or the summer, like this is, and I also hear this lifting while we rise, right?
Yep.
This encouraging the piece. So you saw these people who didn't have the funding or the access, and then you're putting them in these positions where they can develop, but you're also passing down and then having them reach into these NGOs and learn more, and they're learning to lift them up as they're rising too. That's just a beautiful chain of sacred activism.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Beautiful.
This is why it gives me boundless, limitless joy, because it is, like I said, just watching. The founders of these NGOs, I've had a couple of them just call me in tears of joy when the contestants started reaching out to them, and they were like, "I never thought this was going to be possible." One of the NGOs that we're working with is someone who single-handedly is collecting hair from temples, because we do hair cuttings in temples as a part of our rituals, but also in salons and things like that, and has found a wig maker and is processing and making wigs, and so far has donated, before this, and this person, other than the wig maker, this one single person was running this entire operation of collection, cleaning, and all of that to get it to the wig maker, and then the distribution 100% for free for the donors, as well as the wigs were going to cancer patients who lost their hair because of chemo.
Wow.
Right. And since we sort of chose to support him, and one of his main concerns, and he even said this when we introduced him, is he actually has, he got some media coverage, and that news segment got something like 115,000 views.
Yes.
And only 12 people contacted him from that video.
Right. So,
right.
The exposure and the getting people in action steps and creating community around it so that it can keep going.
Exactly. Since we've started working with him, he now has 2 volunteers who stepped in to help him. So he's expanded his team, and he said on a daily basis he's getting at least 8 calls.
Wow.
For donations. And it works. It absolutely works.
And I would love it, AJ, if you could, because I don't know when this recording will go out, but I would love it if you could maybe give us a list of the NGOs, because I'm sure people listening to this, there's going to be some people out there who are like, oh yeah, I can do this. I can donate. I can spread the word. And so if you could share those with us, that would
Absolutely.
be, yeah. Wow.
Absolutely. What I can do is, I'll share them with you right now, but I'll also share the images that we made for our social media about them. So, you can either put the Instagram link in the show notes, or however you want to do it. But we have there's one in Hyderabad that is called Here to Help the Needy. This one has such a great story. It was started during COVID by a bunch of students who had just graduated, but because of COVID could not get jobs, and they were watching all of these things fall apart in life. So they just decided to band together and beg and borrow from their family and friends, and started using those funds to do drives for the needy. And so they do blood drives, clothing drives, plasma drives, phone drives, cell phone drives, so that people have accessibility to communications, because a lot of the COVID communications were happening through WhatsApp and through and many people didn't have cell phones. So cell phone drives, laptop drives for students, book drives, just all kinds of drives. And that's Here to Help the Needy. Then we have animal rescue organization in a coastal area, which is involved in wildlife and domestic animal rescue. And they go after illegal slaughterhouses. They, provide sparrows in India right now are an endangered species because of the heat waves, because of the climate crisis, as well as certain species of butterflies. So they protect them. And on top of that, they go to schools and they teach young kids about climate crisis, environmental protection, and species protection, and what to do if they come across animals in crisis, how to safely help them and get these animals the help that they need.
Humans are amazing.
Yeah, they are.
Is there a way for people to get involved with either the singing competition, or, we're going to post the links for these NGOs, or do you have like a funding source for people if they're listening to this now and they're like, I'm in?
Yes. I do have a GoFundMe campaign going for these NGOs because, especially here for us in the US, even $20 from us goes so far because of the currency exchange rate and the fact that these are small NGOs. We are talking about some NGOs that have an annual budget of $1,000.
Wow.
Yeah. And so whatever help we can give them, is going to help sustain them, because I know I told you about two, but some of the other causes that we have are Alinga Foundation, which is trans rights and survival needs and medical needs support, because the trans Hijra communities in India aren't even considered human. And oftentimes when they go to doctors, they have what are called they're gatekeepers. They're literally like at the gates of the compound. They're guards. The guards turn them away, so they cannot even go in to get an appointment.
Wow.
Yeah, and so that's one. We have another one called Akshaya Seva Samiti. I love this cause because what they do is they take care of cremations for orphan and homeless dead bodies.
Oh my gosh.
And they also take care of medical supplies for a community of people afflicted with leprosy in their area and displaced tribals in their area.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There's
just so many great causes.
Yeah. I wonder, do you feel a lot of our listeners are learning about ancestry, spirit, connecting with who they really are. And I believe that one of the ways to heal our conditions here in the United States is for people to start working with their ancestors again, and for people to start understanding who they really are before they got civilized or colonized in their own bloodline, so that we can understand ourselves as beings of this planet. And I believe that if we start thinking that way, then creating these communities and creating these services will actually be like a no-brainer. It'll just be what we do. And so I wonder, AJ, is there a spiritual aspect? I mean, obviously this is an amazing spiritual journey that you're on, but is there anything, is there anything specific that you can speak to that might inspire people, or from just your own story, that has to do with spirit or ancestry or anything that helped you along this path?
Yeah. Gosh, there's so much to say here, but I mean, none of this, I wouldn't be here without my ancestors, you know? I wouldn't be who I am now without my ancestors. And this project would not happen if I had not gone on that journey to reconnect with my roots, with my heritage, by relearning the language, and by, you know, and also by relearning the cultural elements, and really reconnecting with these communities, my ancestral communities, in a deep, meaningful, heart-to-heart way.
Yes.
This wouldn't happen because I wouldn't even know about these needs.
Yeah.
You know? And so the reconnection had to happen before this idea before I even conceived of this idea in my head. Because until the reconnection happened, those points of, you know, unethical, or, you know, like in the other competitions, like the questionable ethics, or the to what end, or, you know, all of those, they would have only come from, again, this colonial, patriarchal, Western lens. As opposed to through my eyes, but from the souls of my ancestors.
Wow.
So, yeah. And doing this work, I have never felt more connected to my community. I've never felt more at peace. I've never felt stronger in my entire life, emotionally and spiritually, and energetically.
Yeah.
And I've never felt more connected to Mother Earth. Because my people, are all literally halfway across the world from me.
Yeah.
On the other side of this planet. I can't be there. I can't be there among them. But we don't have to be at a certain place on Mother Earth to take care of all of her children.
Yeah.
And that was a huge realization for me.
Oh my gosh. That just makes my heart so open. And how amazing is it that so much of this work you're doing through the internet, right?
Yep. Clubhouse.
Yeah. Okay. So this is something that right. I couldn't stay on Clubhouse for a while in the beginning because I was so addicted. I was on it all the time in 2020. I had to find a balance because I had some like great friends I was meeting. I had a group of Ugandans that I was I get back in touch with them. I haven't talked to them for a while.
I just turned my addiction into my purpose. There we go.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. There's a reason you were led there, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I my heart is so open right now because what you're saying about, connecting and that all of a sudden it changed your lens, that I feel is a very organic and natural progression. That's what happened to me when I started fundraising for these kids. I was on my own pilgrimage to finding my roots in West Africa, and I found my spiritual family and realized that they were protecting orphans and kids who had nothing. And I was like, oh, I can fundraise. That's the easiest thing I can do with all the other things that I had going on. And I just kept it going. And when I got there, it was like, I realized that I still had sort of a lens of, when I first got there, this lens of a colonist is like, okay, we need to get them organized around this idea that me and this other person were thinking of. And I was like, wait. By the end of the trip, I was there for a month. By the end of the trip, I was like, wait, we're talking about getting them organized around some idea that we thought might work. And even though it's helpful, like now that we know so much more about what's going on in these villages and these tribes, I'm like, really, it makes more sense to ask them what they want to do and what they need. Still fundraise and bring money, but how do we build? The questions change. How do we build from what exactly is it that they need and what they want to do and what they have access to? What's the greatest desire? What's the greatest need? And it completely changed how that was happening. And that really came from, again, me, similar to you, reconnecting with my roots. It just naturally came up for me. And I hear this story again and again. I'm just thinking, like, what if 6-7 million people, that's it, just 6 or 7 million people found out who they are, ones that have access to resources and know how to organize?
Yep.
I don't think it takes that much. I think that's the great veil over collective eyes, is that it's a lot of work. But if there was just like a modicum of people on this planet, it's really a small number, 6-7 million.
Yeah.
It really could, we could have world peace, which seems like a cliche, but really, if we could create this, why couldn't we create peace?
Yeah. 100% agree with you, because that was my main motivation behind creating this competition and designing it the way I did, right? It's not for me to organize them. Mm-hmm. It is literally to plant the seed of thought in people's minds that community service is neither difficult nor separate from the rest of life.
Yes.
It can be as simple as breathing and talking. Now, sometimes I get it, the breathing and talking might not be easy, but they're simple.
Yes. Simple. And there's all sorts of access we have to breath work and
it's
finding skills in that.
Yeah. And the greatest thing about this is once you kind of get that, all you have to do is get that momentum going, because now I have some of the contestants who are creating their own resource raising, like not necessarily fundraising campaigns, but resource collection campaigns. My contestants, even though they're on separate teams, because they're working towards the same NGO cause, are coming together to form internal teams. All of this organization is happening very organically, very naturally, without me saying a word about. Those ideas I did not even plant in their head. The only idea I planted was, you can uplift those around you while uplifting yourself.
Lift while we rise.
Lift while we rise. Yeah. That's all I did. And the other thing I did also plant in their head was, community service is so much more than just financial assistance. So if I take out this idea that you donate funds and you keep going away and you walk, go back to your life and do things, I take that off the table. now what?
Yes. Yep.
You know, that being said, of course, if you can give financial assistance, that would be great. But
yeah, of course. Yeah. I feel like that's the minimum that so many of us can do. And just as a reminder, like you said this, I found that to be true too. When I was fundraising, people would be like, "Oh, wait till I get my next paycheck," and they're like wanting to give me, big sums of money, and then they'd forget or whatever, and then I come back around and like revisit with people and be like, "I'm still doing this fundraising," and they'd be like, "Oh no, I don't have," and they were some of them were thinking like, "Oh, I need to give 100 or 200." I'm like, "Look, if you can't do that, if you're struggling, which many of us are, like even $20 can feed this group for like at almost, in some situations, like almost a week."
Yep.
And you said that too, like a small amount of money, if really you're listening, and I'm sure there's many of you out there that are like, I want to get involved or maybe even donate big. And then for some of us, it's like, $10, $5, $10, it matters. It really does.
Yep.
Wow.
Exactly.
And I also something that came up earlier and then it came back was this, we talk a lot about how there's, evil or like internet's bad. And I understand that it can be a time sucker, and all these apps on our phones can be used to program or, might create more illness or conditioning for us. But I think that when you have intentions and have those connections with your heart and what it is that you want to create, then nothing really can stop you. And you do have some kind of spirit or energy behind supporting you. And it doesn't matter if you're doing it, obviously, it doesn't matter that you're doing it through the internet. You can actually use these technologies to help us, just like all of the things that you're talking about creating through these wires and these internets. It's something I think it's important for us to remember, that to not throw what they say, throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Never understood that one.
The bathwater, after it's dirty, you throw it out. But like, you want to make sure you take the baby out, so you're not just looking at it all and just saying it's all dirty. You want to take the baby out because there's something that's good inside.
Right. No, I understand that part of it, but just where this like saying sort of came from, and this sort of, and this is just like, very tongue in cheek again, like this is like, my out of like my, like my insane brain here. It's like, isn't that kind of obvious though? If the baby's done with the bath, you take them out.
I mean, I think to you and to me and probably to our listeners.
It's just that's why this one always confused me, because I'm like, who didn't do this? Who forgot to take the baby out?
That poor baby.
No.
We'll help you, baby.
No. So sorry. Yeah. As you can tell, I crack a lot of corny jokes and I laugh a lot.
I love it. Thank you. Laughing is healing.
Yeah. And interestingly, again, that also happened after I reconnected with my roots and my ancestors, because I did not realize that until that point in my life. Like now, when I look back at pictures, my smiles looks like an RBF.
An RBF? What is that? What is the RBF?
A resting bitch face.
Yeah. What? Oh my gosh.
I just, I barely like to smile. And if I did, they were forced. And I just never thought about, the humor, comedy, happiness, and all of this other stuff. And now it's, to me, as natural as breathing.
Oh, wow.
And it happened through my reconnection with my community, to be able to connect with people with the same shared histories and heritages, and to crack these jokes that nobody else would understand. And if they did, like, they'd probably still not quite know, unless they were a part of the community or part of, this particular lineage or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It was expanding. I mean, to your listeners and to anyone out there, and to what you said earlier, Alexandra, it is necessary for us to shed these veils and find out who we are, find out where we come from.
Yes. Yeah. And, speaking of, you were talking about looking at pictures from yourself from a while back. If the AJ of 20 years ago walked into your dwelling and wished to talk to you, what wisdom would you share with her?
Start the journey now. Don't wait. Start the journey now. Because if you start the journey now, maybe it would not have taken 2 brain injuries for you for you to now turn into me.
Yeah.
And forget all else. Happiness is the most important. Almost everything is through the colonial patriarchal lens right now. Mm-hmm. So cut the crap, get off your high horse, and start learning about who you are.
Yeah.
That's truly what I tell her, because AJ from 20 years ago she thought she knew everything in the world, so she had no sense of exploration or discovery. She was caught up in that logical, mind-centered narrative.
Yeah. AJ, what is your blessing for this world?
My blessing for this world is that we all start realizing that the spirit, the divine, whatever you want to call it, is all around us and within us. And it is the same.
Yeah.
And we are going to experience that collective consciousness when we let ourselves. And that's going to happen soon. It's already underway. Because otherwise conversations like this wouldn't be happening.
Yeah, I feel that. And these conversations are happening everywhere. I mean, I'm hearing inklings of these conversations happening in communities and with friends that that surprised me. I would not have expected to hear them speak in this way. Yeah. And I'm like, ooh, here we go. In our lifetimes. It'll never be the same. And I bless it.
Exactly. That's my blessing too. And while we take care of each other, we also take care of our precious Mother Earth. Mm-hmm. We're going to do that.
Yeah. AJ, it was an honor to have you here. And I really am inspired, and my heart is so open experiencing this wisdom that's coming through you. And I'm also more inspired for how to support my own efforts. And there's like some refiguring that I'm excited to do. You really have kind of moved a dial for me a little bit. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having this conversation with me and spending so much time with me, and really empowering like allowing me to empower myself to share what I've learned so far.
Yeah, and you share so well.
I'm a storyteller. I'm a talker.
You are.
Which is why Clubhouse is perfect for me. I can spend 20 hours on it and I'm like, oh, 20 hours? I thought it was 20 minutes.
You are so sweet. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Wow, I am so inspired by this conversation that we had with AJ I had with AJ, but I feel like you're all here with me. So yes, the conversation we all just had with AJ. I am inspired to see how the work that I'm doing can be more community focused and also more aligned with who I really am. And we all know that there's the taking off the filters and rewilding, as we talked about at the beginning of this episode. Remember how at the beginning of this episode, AJ talked about how she sings 6 to 8 hours a day? Well, I requested an offering of a song, and she did share that. I would like to say, though, head over to her Instagram because she has so many songs that she shares on Instagram. The sound for the song that we are about to hear is not the best sound, but if you close your eyes and feel into it, it'll shake your heart. It's beautiful. And one last thing, if you are interested in the work that AJ is doing, yes, you can find everything over there on our Instagram, and also the GoFundMe that AJ is talking about is in the show notes of the show, and I believe it is active at least until May. It may extend beyond that. So blessings and enjoy this beautiful song.
As my offering today, I'd like to, now that I sing so much, especially on Clubhouse and with my community, I'd like to share the very first Telugu song that I ever sang on the Clubhouse community when I reconnected with my community and my heritage. It's a Telugu song, and it talks about the power of the flow of music through your heart and your soul, and how that heals, how that inspires, how that motivates, and more and more. It is, it also talks about the divine and how, the divine is imbued in this flow of music. So it's called Swararaga Ganga Pravahame. It's from an older movie. It's one of my favorite pieces ever. Pravahame Ganga Pravahame Swararaga Ganga Pravahame Angatma Sandhana Yogame Prapteva Santeti Kalike Palike Kuditika Gana Sarasi Ruhamalika Swararaga Ganga Pravahame Kundala Lopala Ningilo Urimenu Megham Minnalaki Pillana Grovilo Pilavani Movilo Kurisenu Ragam Meenatiki Mattintirai Manikyamaipoye Sangeeta Ratana Karana Swara Saptakale Keratalu Kaga Aganga Pongindilona Swararaga Ganga Pravahame Angatma-sandhana-yoga-me Prapte-vasante-ti-kalike Palike-kuhugite-ka Gana-sarasi-ruhamalika.
The original and healthy beats for this podcast were created by Quincy Davis. His details are in the show notes. Woke Wisdom podcast episodes are written, hosted, produced, and edited by me, Alexandra Loves. My guests, of course, bring their own wisdom. If you have any questions you want me to answer on the podcast, you can email me at wokewisdompodcast@gmail.com, or even better, text the podcast at 601-301-6974. I would be so grateful if you helped me share these messages far and wide by boosting the podcast with good reviews on Apple Podcasts, or by sharing the episodes with friends and groups and families on social media. That would be so awesome. It just takes a few moments and a few clicks. Click, 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 clickety, click. Be blessed, and I'll see you next week. Oh, one more thing. They told me I needed a disclaimer, so cue the music. Let's do this. The information in all podcast episodes and corresponding materials, the Woke Wisdom Podcast with Alexandra Loves, are provided for general, informational, and explorative purposes only. It is not professional advice. Any content provided by Alexandra Loves, guests, bloggers, sponsors, or authors are of their own opinion and not intended to defame, slander, or malign any person, place, or thing. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on the podcast or attached material. Alexandra Loves and her guests are not therapists, counselors, physicians, unless otherwise stated. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast or corresponding materials to treat any mental, physical, or medical condition in either yourself or others. Please seek out appropriate professionals for help. Privacy matters to the Woke Wisdom Podcast. People, places, and scenarios mentioned in the podcast may be changed to protect confidentiality. Through this podcast and corresponding materials, you're able to link to other websites which are not under the control of this podcast or Alexandra Loves. The inclusion of any links does not necessarily imply a recommendation or endorse the views expressed within them. In no event is the Woke Wisdom Podcast or Alexandra Loves liable for any loss or damage, including without limitation, indirect or consequential loss or damage, or any loss and damage whatsoever arising from your interaction with this podcast or corresponding materials. This podcast and all corresponding materials should not be used in any legal capacity whatsoever. This podcast and all corresponding material is owned and copyrighted by Alexandra Loves. You are welcome to download and play the podcast and share with others for personal use. Please acknowledge the Woke Wisdom Podcast with Alexandra Loves as the source of the material. You may not, except without our express written permission, distribute or commercially exploit the content. Email wokewisdompodcast@alexandraloves.com to attain written permission.